This is Capitol View with your host, Jesse Tenor.
Hey Capitol viewers, this week I sat down with House Speaker Matt Shepard and Senate President Jim Hendren just before the start of the 92nd General Assembly. We talked about ethics, highway funding, and teacher raises. Here's the rest of our discussion, including their thoughts on funding Medicaid expansion and possible upcoming constitutional amendments in a Capitol View web exclusive. And for the first time in a session in a while, you guys are not expecting drama over the state's Medicaid expansion program. Can you go into a little bit about why that is, especially since there is pending litigation?
Well, I think we're 6 years into the program now. We made major changes to the program to satisfy the concerns that some who had reluctantly supported it before. We passed the appropriation in the Senate last time with 1 or 2 members not even able to vote. Some of the members who were adamantly opposed to it will not be back. I do think that just the makeup of it and the realization that shut down politics and shutting down an entire department because you're unhappy with a program that started 6 years ago is not an effective way to govern. So I've heard nothing on the Senate end about a desire to have that fight and to shut down an agency. So that doesn't mean it can't happen. It doesn't. All it takes is 8 or 9 legislators, and it becomes real dramatic real fast on the Senate end. But I don't see much appetite for that.
What about in the House? Have you been hearing about any certain appetite to bring this back?
Not really. There really hadn't been a whole lot of discussion about it. So much of the talk has been about other issues, whether it's tax cuts or transformation, some of the other items that are getting more attention. So there just really hadn't been the discussion that we've seen in the recent past. And so I feel like that, of course, with regard to what's pending in court, as I said, with the Press Association, as an attorney, I recognize that a judge is going to make a decision, and I have no control over that. All we can do is continue to go about the business of the state, and so I don't think we're going to see the type of issues arise that maybe we've seen in the past.
Okay, and then just one final question for you. The legislature can refer up to 3 constitutional amendments. Some that we have seen already. I know you're working on one, and that's to essentially do away with the fiscal, just kind of combine everything into one. You can probably say that a little more eloquently than I did. There is also another one to create kind of a jungle primary system, and then of course we could throw back, tort reform, and we could also say, with the highway funding, maybe voters consider some sort of tax increase to deal with that. So what do you think the top 3 could be?
I think it's yeah. I think it remains to be seen on that. I think that a couple of the ones that you mentioned have seemed to get more attention. I think the fiscal session is something that's been discussed quite a bit. So that's one that I think would be up there. But I think really, as we've seen in the past, when it comes to those constitutional amendments, a lot of times that you don't see that really come together until very late in the session. So I think right now so much of the attention is on maybe some of the items that are a little more pressing that we anticipate will be taking up sooner than later.
So feel free to kind of get in on this too, but then so say if some sort of legislation would pass about tort reform, and then it wouldn't end up going, you guys wouldn't end up voting for it to go before the voters. Is that something that we could see with some of these issues, is legislation, and then that wouldn't really matter and go to the voters?
Like Speaker Shepard said, it's hard to say this early because usually we'll have 10 or 20 different proposals to make the top 3. I do think several of the ones that you mentioned there, the fact that the legislature has put tort reform on times before makes it likely that there'll be some effort to continue that effort and respond to the changes that the court said are going to have to be made in order for it to stand a court challenge. So I think that one, because of its history, is likely to get some serious consideration. But the other ones, it's too early to tell. You just don't know how many ideas are going to come up. It's amazing that we amend the Constitution as much as we do in Arkansas. It's amazing that we might have to amend the Constitution to do a highway program for some of the ways that we're talking about. But that's the system we have.
And be sure to catch Capitol View on the air Sunday mornings at 8:30 on KARK right before Meet the Press.